Hi, I'm Jodie Foster, and I'm going to break down some scenes from my filmography.
Why do you think I split in the first place? There ain't nothing there.
Yeah, but you can't live like this. It's a hell. Girls should live at home.
Didn't you ever hear of women's lib?
Yeah, well, I was 12 years old when I did Taxi Driver. I'd already made a movie with Scorsese. I'd already done Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore with him, and I'd made a lot of films, so it wasn't like I was inexperienced. But it was really the first time that I ever really understood what acting was. I mean, I thought acting was just like you just said a bunch of lines someone else wrote. I thought, well, that's kind of a dumb job. But I realized watching Scorsese and watching Robert De Niro that in fact I hadn't really brought enough to the equation, that it was my fault for not having, although I was only 12, but for not having brought enough to it.
Cab thing is just part-time.
Are you a narc?
Do I look like a narc?
Yeah.
I am a narc.
God, I don't know who's weirder, you or me.
That particular scene in the diner, Scorsese had some notes about what he wanted. He wanted me to change my glasses a bunch of times. He wanted me to put a bunch of sugar on top of because I guess he knew he had seen that already with somebody who was, had a little bit of a drug problem, and he wanted to see that on screen.
And what are you talking about? You walk out with those creeps and lowlifes and degenerates out on the street, and you sell your...
And then Robert De Niro threw a lot of improvisations at me. And that was the first time that had ever happened in my life. And it was kind of life-shaking. There was a moment, which is on screen in the film, where he says, he's trying to explain to me why Harvey Keitel's character, who plays my pimp in the film, doesn't really care about me. He doesn't really love me. And he's trying to find examples. And I'm listening to him, and he says, he doesn't care about you. He doesn't care about you. He calls you a little piece of chicken.
You know what he told me about you? He calling you names. He called you a little piece of chicken.
The 12-year-old part of me that had thought that was really funny. I mean, I thought it was funny that he called me a chicken. And it was the first time that he had ever said that in the improv. And for a second I laughed, thinking like, are you kidding me? You think that's an insult? And then kind of caught myself in character, really caught myself going like, well, he didn't really mean that. I mean, he didn't mean it in a bad way,
He calling you names. He called you a little piece of chicken.
He doesn't mean that.
Yeah, I remember that moment. I remember getting caught and feeling like, oh, did I mess everything up because I found that funny? Or is that okay? Can I use that? That was definitely the toughest day of actually 2 days of shooting that I've ever had. We worked a 22-hour day. It was the last day of shooting. Everybody needed to get on a plane to go somewhere else to shoot a second unit thing. And everything went wrong. There were supposed to be a bunch of moths. We had all these moths brought in from Suriname or from wherever they were brought in, and they all died because it was freezing cold. So there were a whole bunch of guys. They turned on the heat full blast, and there was a whole bunch of guys with dead moths with fishing poles, pretending that their moths were running around the space. We just ran into a lot of problems that night, and I think everybody was just completely bleary-eyed. Well, as you know, with movie making, if you're looking directly into the lens, you're not actually looking at the person, you're looking at the camera. So for a lot of the scenes, because there's a direct to camera style of filmmaking in Silence of the Lambs, for a lot of the scenes, the actor wasn't even there, or they were very far behind the camera. You're usually just looking directly down the lens. So especially for the night vision goggle scenes, no, there was no Ted Levine there. It was really just the cameraman, me and the cameraman. it wasn't really shot in night vision. It was shot in full light. So if you're one of those movie nerds and you want to know what the big mistake is in that scene, you'll notice there's a moment where Ted's hand comes out and he's trying to kind of stroke my hair because Buffalo Bill is crazy but wants her hair. And you see a shadow. You see a shadow of his hand. Obviously, if there was no light, there would be no shadow. So if you're a film nerd, you're looking out for things like that. I think it's a horror film and a character-driven movie. We don't have to choose between the two. I think I love that about the movie, that it has a genre quality to it, and yet it's incredibly deep and meaningful and has other references to it. That's what I always took from it. In some ways, for me, it always felt like a myth. It felt like a archaic kind of myth that was applied to a genre film.
That expires in 1 week. You're not real FBI, are you?
I'm still in training at the academy.
Jack Crawford sent a trainee to me.
Yes, I'm a student. I'm here to learn from you. Maybe you can decide for yourself whether or not I'm qualified enough to do that.
I just really wanted to make movies that were meaningful and that were about complex characters. And some of the ways that I did that was to take characters that weren't particularly moving or meaningful and make them complicated. And in other ways, sometimes I've taken roles that were written for men and been able to change the gender, like Flight Plan, for example, that I was able to, really the sex didn't really matter. And then we were able to see the film from a different perspective. But with Silence of the Lambs, the film could easily have been made about a young rookie male FBI agent, but there's something that's much deeper about the history of women in the FBI, the history of women in that mythology as heroes that I think I wasn't 100% aware of, but that I knew was important when I was young.
You know, we get a lot of detectives here, but I must say I can't ever remember one as attractive. Will you be in Baltimore overnight? Because this can be quite a fun town if you have the right guide.
I'm sure this is a great town, Dr. Chilton, but my instructions are to talk to Dr. Lecter and report back this afternoon.
I see.
Well, I think the film is really timeless, which is nice. It's not a film that feels like it's of a specific era. It feels like it was able to transition throughout the eras. I think it was a film that took itself seriously and yet had some kind of humor to it, which I loved. But I think that it was, I think that there were these rules, these ideas about how, you're either doing a genre movie or you're doing a character-driven movie, and the two don't cross. And I think the fact that we were able to do both was quite groundbreaking for movies. And it's the reason why the film had so much acclaim, I think, and why it won the Oscars.
Every day I say to myself, this little kid is exactly the kind of person I want to be. I mean, let's face it. The best thing that ever happened to me is that I'll worry so much. Okay?
I was 26 and a half, maybe 27 years old when I directed my first film. And, part of me was very conscious and intellectual and a good student. And it's something that I'd always wanted to do. And I was very prepared. And then the other part of me was just hanging on, and just guided by instinct. And I think that's probably the best thing about your first film, right? Is that there's just so much of your heart that's on the table. And sometimes you just have to follow that, and 50% of that works out well and 50% of it doesn't. So I'm proud of that movie. It was a big moment for me, and it was something that I'd always wanted to do, direct a film.
Go get your bag.
Dee Dee, I know this must be difficult for you.
You might want to keep an extra telephone around.
Excuse me?
He likes to take them apart, he likes...
Oh.
Sometimes.
Right, yeah, directing and acting at the same time. It's not something that I would advise. I didn't know any better when I was 26, 27 years old. We didn't really have a video monitor. We had a video monitor, but we didn't have playback. So I could never really look at myself. I had no idea kind of what I had done, which I thought was okay. You know, I'd made enough movies that I learned to trust my instincts as an actor. And I had a really good producer, Peggy Reisky, who worked with me and who was able to kind of help me through the process. But it's weird acting and directing at the same time. I try not to do it too often because I always think you don't always get the best performances out of yourself.
Listen to me, Jane. If anything happens to him, anything at all, I'll kill you. Now, I don't mean that I'll just hurt you. I mean that I'll kill you.
I do like that scene a lot between me and Diane Wiest and the little boy, Adam Hun Bird. I remember when I said that line, I said the line, you know, I'll kill you. And I remember thinking to myself, like, should she be kidding? You know, should she say it in a kind of like a kidding way? And I was like, no, she'll kill you, you know, and I really wanted it to feel as strong as a heart attack.
Bye, sweetie. Hands on noses, guys.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
I'd say it wasn't on purpose, except it really was a film that felt autobiographical. I mean, even though I was certainly no math genius and I wasn't prodigious in any way, except that I did a prodigious job, I had a lot to say about growing up as a special person in a way. And somebody who, like the character in the movie, wasn't so much what I knew, but it was what I understood. And I really wanted to explore that. I wanted to explore what it felt like to be this prodigy figure between these two women, who in some ways is speaking for them, is the character who's going to go on to do all the things that they can't do. And I felt that very strongly in my own life. The wonderful Bob Zemeckis, director of Contact. And he's somebody that really understands how to work with special effects and how to come up with things, invent things in the moment that have never been invented before. That sequence, which probably takes place in about, I don't know, it's probably 2 seconds of the movie, was about 2 weeks to shoot, right? Because there's all sorts of things that I do. Some of the things that we tried was that I had to do scenes backwards. So when I was talking, I had to learn the dialogue backwards. I don't really remember why, but there was something about we were only able to accomplish it by doing it backwards and then running it forwards again.
Some celestial event. No words. No words.
There was also a scene where I kind of like twirl around, but since my hair doesn't move, you can't really tell that I'm moving. So they attached a camera to kind of like a whirligig that went around with me. There's all sorts of creative inventions that Bob Zemeckis came up with for that sequence. Contact was written by Carl Sagan. He wrote the original screenplay first. People don't know that. And then he decided he was not very good at writing screenplays. So he went back and wrote the novel, which took him 10 years. And Carl was one of the producers, and Carl was very involved with the movie. And in fact, he died while we were in the middle of shooting. So for me, the whole movie really is about Carl and Carl's relationship with science and with spirituality, which for him were one and the same. And he really really saw that through the lens of a young woman, which I thought was really quite amazing.
We're drinking beers in a prison gift shop. What the hell else would you call it?
Well, I was really surprised to know that there was a gift shop and a little snack bar at Guantanamo. That sounds horrible. I mean, I don't know why we have a gift shop at Guantanamo with, lots of crazy T-shirts with terrorists on them and such there. But there's so much that we didn't know about Guantanamo. Those of us in America who lived through 9/11, who lived through the fear and the terror of that moment, I think we didn't ask a lot of questions about who were the detainees and what was going on down there. So there was a lot to learn.
Military's founded on law and order. They won't let you out of boot camp unless you can square a 4-inch fold on a bed sheet. The law says you get open file discovery, and I want you to have discovery. That way, when I beat you, your client will have nothing to hide behind.
We shot all of the film in Cape Town, South Africa. It's right on the water, beautiful, kind of amazing natural landscape. So it seemed to be sort of a good, even though it's halfway across the world, a good stand-in for Guantanamo, Cuba. But it also had other buildings that might look like Washington, D.C., and some houses that might look like they belong in America. So that was also useful. Beautiful country, and we're very lucky to have the team there.
You sound very sure of that outcome.
You haven't seen what I've seen. Let me ask you, I understand everyone has a right to defense, but doesn't it bother you at all working for someone like this?
I'm not just defending him, I'm defending the rule of law.
What I hope people take from it is Mohamedou's story. He's an amazing person who has gone through unspeakable things. He was tortured, he was abducted, he was kept from anyone he loved, kept from a trial, never charged. All of that happened, and yet instead of being angry and resentful, had his faith, and that allowed him to be forgiving and joyful and come out as more of a human being than he went in.
My turn. Let me ask you, what if you're wrong?
We're not.
What if you are? You built this place. You abandoned all of your principles, all of your laws, and you were wrong.
That's an amazing story about resilience and about how important it is to keep your humanity in the face of being broken by governments.